KP.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation because it ties into a lot of the things that I've had to transgress. And I really look forward to hearing your insight
Yeah.
and your wisdom and your
Thanks.
experience.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and thanks for reaching out.
You're so welcome. We're going to start easy. What books are you currently reading and what feels alive in them for you right now?
Oh, that's great. I'm reading, I might mispronounce it, but Circe. And it's this kind of like recreation of like ancient Greek mythology, but more from a perspective of one of the goddesses who becomes a witch and is a little bit more connected to the human side of things. And so I really connect, obviously, with the witch part. That feels really resonant to me. And I think this like hermit journey of going inward and living on her own and working with the herbs and the earth and learning just through process and mistakes of how to work that magic. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have named yourself a grief witch.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned off air that you have another business surrounding that.
Yeah.
I know you have some herbalism as well.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start with that and then you moved into the counseling side, kind of like me?
Yes, a little bit. I would say that I've always, been working within grief in one way or another. But my career started as a home birth midwife, and that was very foundational to everything that I do now and really taught me everything that I know. So, yeah, and then now I'm a counselor, so I have a private practice, and then I also have a different business in which I am a grief witch and get to really claim that outside of, all of the structure around being a therapist, in which I offer creative offerings for grief, specifically an annual zine that I put out and collecting submissions for people who are experiencing grief. And then I'm also right now doing an Artist Way group, but with the lens of grief through that. So it's kind of like a mixed bag that I get to be a little more experimental with and creative in.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to the clinical side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I love the clinical side too, but it's nice to have some balance.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like it helps with empathy burnout
Yes, 100%.
and creativity
Yes,
too.
absolutely. And I know after burning out as a midwife that it's like I have to be really protective of my energy and how I'm navigating entering this phase of my career and just being really intentional about that.
And what I'm noticing too, and you probably already experienced this, is the difference between, for those of you listening, watching, the difference between like a grief midwife, a grief witch, and a counselor or therapist is you're not really coaching. There's no coaching aspect. You're not leading the charge when you're sitting in a counseling perspective. You're really leaning back and allowing somebody else to lead the process and kind of helping them navigate their life more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and each client is so unique. And so there might be a client that I am a little more of an active role, or we are working specifically with grief, and that's the intention. Or it might be really just being like an empathetic presence and, being witness and offering support and tools along the way. But it's a lot more of a leaning back and receiving and then kind of figuring out which thread to pull, when in my other role I feel like I bring the threads in and then it's whoever kind of comes in and joins that.
Yes. And meets you there.
Yeah.
Name something you can't live without.
Oh my goodness. The first thing that comes to mind is my cats.
That's a popular one. I love this question because everyone's always perplexed. They're like, there's so mmany things that I can't live without.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally. And, I should give a little shout out to my puppy that I have too, but, she's, still finding her rank in my home. So I love her so much. She's so cute. She's an old English sheepdog, and she's like 60 pounds and 7.5 months old right now. So she's
big and floppy.
Yes, but I love her so much too. And yeah, she's really finding a way into my heart. But yeah, and then I would say otherwise just like connection with nature and the earth and, the seasons and really being, which is where a lot of my spirituality is held. So just being there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's one topic you could talk about for hours and never tire of?
Pretty much everything that you proposed in your email to me. I was like, wow, you really have like read
Tapped
through my
in.
stuff. Yeah. And I was like, great. I'm glad that my like, heart is coming through,
Yes.
what I'm creating out there. But yeah, I mean, anything at like the threshold of life and death, spirituality, working with grief, creativity, midwifery. I'm definitely still such a nerd, even though I'm not practicing. I still am so obsessed with everything about midwifery. So, yeah, those are the top items, I'd say.
Okay, so a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, how did you get into midwifery?
Yeah, Well, I think that it started when I was younger. For one, I was always obsessed with people who were pregnant and birth and babies and just was very magnetized by that. I know.
They're
It's
so great.
so special. And then my aunt is, or was a labor and delivery nurse. And so that was kind of like in the family system, a part of the language that was happening around me. And then in high school, I went to a kind of nerdy high school called New Technology High School. And we were required to do a 50-hour internship our senior year. And I got to shadow an OBGYN.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I mean, my first day there, I walked in and they're like, oh, yeah, the doctor's like in a C-section. He got called into emergency C-section. I was like, okay, like I'll come back tomorrow. And they're like, no, let's get you scrubbed up. And I was like, okay, like that's what we're doing.
Baby.
So it was wild. So it was really cool to have that experience. And then a couple years later, I was taking a women's history course and our teacher talked about midwifery and home birth and showed us the film, The Business of Being Born. And my mind was blown. I hadn't even heard of home birth at that point in my life. And so I was like, that's what I want to be doing. That's it right there. So I totally shifted my life path in that direction.
I had an OBGYN who was also a midwife.
Yes.
But I was in Berkeley.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I drove specifically to Berkeley.
Yes.
I moved doctors. I had one in San Francisco, and I moved doctors because I wanted that experience. And she was very well known at the time. I don't know if she's still out there, but either way.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about this witch part.
I'd say I really have just identified as a witch for quite some time. And some of that comes from just, my heart and spirituality and all of that. But also a lot of herbalism background and working with the earth and being connected to the seasons, as I mentioned before. And so, yeah, I think when I was trying to discover what my title was going to be for my other business, Together in Sacred Grief, I was really like, okay, do I call myself a grief coach? Do I, go with like grief midwife? That's definitely, still something I identify with, but which just kind of made sense. And I think some of that is, crafting rituals with other people. That's really important, like being with rite of passage.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to be that kind of like threshold person and being able to guide and utilize magic and spirituality felt like that would be a really resonant title.
And probably pulling it out of other past lives.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Leaning into
Totally.
that, not being afraid to lean into that. Us witches need to stick together.
Yes.
What do you love doing more than anything else?
I really find so much simple joy in being able to just be out in the yard and working in the yard with my partner. Like, I don't know, every time we do that, it just is so grounding and sweet and spacious. And, you know, it's so simple and kind of like so typical, like gardening. But I really just find so much sweetness in that because it implements in that seasonal piece and the wheel of the year and being witness to what's growing and emerging and what's dying and just taking stock every moment and being with that process and participating in it too.
I love gardening.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it because for me it's grounding and it also gives me spaciousness. It gives me time with the plants. The plants don't ask anything. Well, I mean, they do ask, but they don't ask anything
They're like,
of
please,
me.
water, please.
They don't ask anything of me. It's just pure enjoyment.
Yeah.
And I get to be in my head and process, probably very similar to like, you know, when someone goes on a hike or a run, and it just allows me to clear and be in process. And I love having my hands in the dirt, and I love new growth. Like when the plants get new leaves, I'm like, you can do it.
Totally.
So excited for you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I cheer them on. Okay, so what makes you the happiest in your everyday life?
These are such great questions and helpful for me to kind of find some reflection point. But I mean, lately, what's been bringing me the most joy, I'd say, is these moments of letting myself sit down and like watercolor and really bringing just presence. And just this last year, I stopped journaling in the way that I have always done it, which is just writing and writing and writing. I still do sometimes, but just starting to implement in art and not trying to make it pretty, just really trying to get my expression on the page. And that has been a strong informant in my work and just, you know, being in that process, but being able to just sit down and paint and not worry about anything else. I feel very privileged to be able to have access to that right now in my life, and just really it feels so special to be able to have that.
It really does.
Yeah, and then also just like other simple things like taking a walk with my spouse and, you know, being in the present moment or taking a drive into the forest and doing a long hike, you know, just the things that are really grounding, working with my film camera, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You are an artist. What are you naturally gifted in? Leading into that, what are you naturally gifted in, especially in the way you show up with others?
I have always been incredibly sensitive and very attuned. And, you know, some of that obviously stems from trauma, just like, you know, being very hypervigilant and noticing really small, subtle shifts. But I also believe that some of that is just like part of my heart and part of my soul and who I am. And I think it allows me a wider perspective into people's experiences in front of me and being able to, similar to those threads, like maybe seeing more threads than the average person and being able to bring in different perspectives or to work with deeper themes or like the symbolism. I really love to speak in metaphor, you know, so I think really being present and loving and caring and empathetic and like deeply compassionate just naturally serves me in everything that I do. And being like open and explorative and curious as well.
What are you most passionate about in this season of your life?
To be completely honest, my partner and I just secured our sperm donor. And so we're like, working towards getting pregnant. And that feels like it's such a wild time in life to even think about. But it's been a really long-standing, thing for me. And so being able to bring in all of my midwifery brain into that is like actually just so refreshing and fun, and like feels like this experience of completion, like kind of a full circle moment. And I'm just at the precipice of it. And I'm well aware of like the journey ahead is going to be very twisty turvy, and just being at this like sacred moment of the before feels like I'm able to take in the moments that I'm like, I get to sit down and just paint right now, and how quiet it is, and like how I should just bask in this, or just like really being able to, like do research and be, all sciencey in my brain. So, and in the spirituality of it too.
How incredible for you to have the opportunity to midwife other people's babies for as long as you have.
Yeah.
And to finally be able to create your own.
Yes. It feels really, really special. It's definitely something that I have been kind of waiting for a long time, and haven't been ready, but have been ready to be ready for it, So I feel really just so excited to be able to be, a midwife to myself too.
In this next chapter.
Yeah.
What a crazy time also to be having a baby.
Seriously. Yeah, it's not.
The soul you're going to pull in. I cannot wait.
Totally.
Yeah, I cannot wait for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we talk about that, we're like, well, I don't know what's going to change in the next few years, and where we're at in our life and body. It's like this is kind of the time to start that journey. And so I do feel a lot of trust in that, like, okay, the soul that's coming through, and just being a part of the fabric of humanity in this moment in time, and just like hoping for the best, because it's a little wild and obviously like devastating and like awful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's real. How do you understand your role as a midwife or guide rather than a fixer or an expert?
Will you say that again?
How do you understand your role as a midwife or guide rather than a fixer or expert?
Yes. I think that the midwifery piece took a while for me to deconstruct that rescuer part in me in that role. And, it's really hard. Honestly, that's part of what burnt me out, is that I was like, I have to heal my trauma, and being on call 24/7 and having these like adrenaline dumps in my body is not going to help that. Because like being in that state of having to be so responsive to either, just like being responsive to someone who's in labor, and, going and joining them and assessing and holding that responsibility, or like responding to emergencies, or having a transfer and then operating in the hospital, which is like a whole other thing. Like so intense at times. So I think being in that role for a while, I was in that kind of like rescuer part that was coming in. And after a while, recognized that and realized like, okay, I need to find a way to separate the rescuer part from my midwife part, and also my like healer part, or, the person who is showing up and providing care to other people. And I feel really, really glad that I can come into the therapy field now and like kind of have had process around that, and be able to recognize that like I'm not here to fix, and I actually don't want to fix. And some of that is just like kind of my belief in that we are already whole as we are, and just really leaning into that. But also not to get full in my head, or like, feel that weight of I'm the one responsible for someone's well-being, or being the one who is, changing their circumstances, because I'm really glad I'm not a god, like I don't want that role. That's stressful. And I think it takes away the autonomy from clients as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do your friends most appreciate about you?
I mean, probably my listening skills is pretty high up there. I think the ones that like really know me know that I'm a weirdo too, and like really appreciate that. But probably resonance and my like dedication to showing up consistently and as consistently as I can, and yeah, being able to hold space and provide that tenderness towards my friends as they do for me, and be able to be in the sensitivity and also the magic, and like nerd out about astrology and like all of that kind of fun stuff. So yeah.
Tell me something unique or interesting about you that only those close to you would know.
Let's see. I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, that like things that come to my mind are like things from my childhood, like weird little, moments in my childhood. But yeah, I don't think that the audience needs to know like that I ate a worm when I was 7 years old. You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
did you really?
yes. Yeah.
Were you just curious what it tasted like?
No, one of my uncles dared me to do it and said,
okay.
I'll give
You're
you
that kid.
$5 if you swallow this worm, and I did. So
You swallowed it?
yeah.
No chewing?
No.
Okay.
Thank goodness I didn't chew.
Yeah,
but
okay.
also still weird.
Yeah. Like weird in retrospect, or weird in the moment? Was it weird in the moment too?
Very weird in the moment. I actually, this is going to be so disturbing, but I tied it in a knot so that I could just like have it contained.
Small, yeah.
And just swallowed it. So yeah, but
That was smart on your part.
I was a kid of the earth, so it kind of fit.
You were.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, why was he daring you to do that?
Because like pretty much he's a troll, and just was like, someone who is always fucking with us and like putting like bear tracks in the snow, and like just tricking us. So, he probably didn't think I'd do it, but I am stubborn and like to prove myself, I guess. So that's what I did.
I'm so curious now because you brought up astrology. What is your sign?
Yeah, I am a Virgo sun, Capricorn rising, and Aquarius moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about stubborn.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, just ask my partner about that one.
Definitely have your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
Okay. What cultural or moral values do you hold most dearly, and why?
I would say that, well, I would say culturally, my queer identity, and it's really not just like, oh, my sexuality, I'm queer, and my gender, I'm genderqueer. It's like, I feel like it is such a way of being in life, and I had a really big reorientation to that in my late 20s, and kind of like having a second coming out, and really having to pivot so much of my life. And now when I look around it, it's like there's so much more emphasis on community and connection, as well as like really breaking down all of the, like patriarchal, white supremacist, like homophobic, structures that keep us so tied up and, powerless in so many ways. So a lot of it was really reclaiming my power, and then being able to continue that in my life in like in an unapologetic way, and and knowing that I don't have to be accepted by the wider, web, the wider audience. It's really just me and my people, and who are all kinds of people, but just, knowing that I can be myself around the people that I'm close to because I feel safe. So cultivating that, I think.
And a lot of acceptance.
Yes, absolutely.
What's one thing you changed your mind about over the years, and what helped you see it differently?
Well, I'll just follow that thread that I was just speaking to. I was in a relationship in my 20s for most of my 20s with someone who identified as a man. And yeah, we were engaged for like 7 years, and then we got married, and within 3 to 6 months of that, I like kind of had this coming to and was like, oh, I just like totally oriented my life in this way that actually isn't who I am. And I'm still friends with that person. I love them very much. But it really took this, like, I always think of it as like the hanging man card in the tarot. Like it was
you
like
mentioned that a
such
couple of times now.
yeah, it just was such a like shift in and having to surrender and just like totally deconstruct my life. So yeah, that was a really important part of my path, and I'm so glad for it that I was true to myself, even though it was really scary and meant, that I had to kind of take down what I had just built, but it was very much worth it.
What do you think it was about being married to them that was different than being with them for 7 years and being engaged?
Honestly, I think that there was this kind of perceived, on some part of my nervous system, some perceived sense of safety and security. Like, oh, have that for once in my life. Like, and then being able to like really see, oh, this isn't actually like really what I'm needing, and that security, quote unquote. But yeah, it really was that moment of like, oh, my attachment system's like, oh yeah, this is secure and actually not what I really want. And I needed to face that truth, and I ran from it for a really long time, but it just took me until that moment to do so.
How amazing that the two of you are still close.
Yeah.
And that he accepted that and took that.
Yeah. He's a really special person. Yeah. And I feel like I think probably both of us knew on some level. And, Louis had their parts too in it. And it's, something that was just kind of a consensus of like, yeah, this is what needs to shift. And just through the years, like, still having those hikes together and just checking in along the way. And now it feels just like so normal and easy to just, reach out and be connected, and just really feels like family. Yeah.
What's one social cause you feel deeply committed to?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. There's so many, but I really am deeply committed to the sense of liberation, and that, it's so essential that liberation is for all people. And actually, where I feel like that's deepened in along the way through the years. But when I took transpersonal psychology at my school, it was through a liberatory lens. And that teacher just brought that in, of like this intersection of spirituality with liberation. And it just was really a profound experience. And so I think in building awareness and offering people space to, like structurally things need to obviously change dramatically. And I think that we're in the process of that death happening.
Yeah, we are. Speaking of midwife.
Yes, totally. Totally.
Oh, it's an ugly birth.
Yeah, it's a little rough. We got a shoulder dystocia.
Going down with some screams.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think just really trying to make those shifts in my day-to-day life and really holding myself to, like being humble and always being curious and learning and being willing to make mistakes and, but also just like holding space for others and knowing that every person, like deserves that space and to be able to connect with themselves or, their spirituality or their sense of inner power. There's so many like moving pieces to that.
Mm-hmm. What's one thing you wish more people talked about openly or honestly?
Death. Big time death.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. I think that, in our culture, like I'll say Western society broadly, we have an avoidance of death and a denial of death.
Especially when we don't have to think about it.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Like when we're younger.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not.
And our parents aren't really quite that age.
Yes.
So it's not even on the radar.
Totally. It's not integrated into the day-to-day life like it once was or is in some cultures still. But yeah, it's really something that I think pulls us away, not to mention also like the media and how like even aging and like mortality, just facing our mortality.
Especially for women.
Yes, 100%. It's really like prominent. And I think
it is.
At least for me, and part of why I do this work is I experienced a death very young. And so that was a part of my upbringing and a part of, it wasn't held very well by my family system necessarily, but, that was something that I integrated into my daily living and my spirituality. And the more over the years that I stepped into like connecting with death, the more life becomes more vibrant and there is more of a sacredness and a presence and a gratitude. And it's not easy to get there. Like, I've had 25 years of being able to practice this. It's not to say that grief isn't like so hard and brings you to your knees.
Yes.
But sometimes, getting to the other side of that, not of grief in general, but, one of those deep grief cries, for instance, like sometimes life looks a little more vibrant because you've kind of tapped into that awareness that there is a different experience at play. And I think if there was more awareness around death, our society would look a lot different.
It would. There's contrast.
Yes.
And an appreciation and a reverence for what we have.
Yes.
We wouldn't just be glib and say, be present. We would actually be present to what is.
Absolutely.
And, less, maybe like disassociation and avoidance like you started with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I feel like I'm hopeful that's where we're moving. I feel like we're going through a major awakening collectively, and I feel like there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that like in plain light with the deaths that are happening, and then on a bigger, wider level, I think we're facing the death of a system that is way outdated and does not serve us and
hasn't for eternity.
Yes, absolutely. And is so...
If ever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's just really
a certain group of people
yes.
really well.
Yep.
Including our founding fathers, if we're just talking about the U.S.
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty, it's a really faulted system. And, I think it's so important that we're in this process right now. It's a little sad that it's taken, I'll just, say this, but it's sad that it's taken white people dying in the news by ICE for it to kind of like wake more people up.
Yep.
That's like, and welcome aboard. Like, yes, let's get with it and like, let's make the shifts and make the changes and band together. Like, it's just so that I think death comes into this too, is like it's so isolating because there isn't that woven into our culture. It's so isolating. And because of that, we're not connected in with community and can see the humanity in someone else next to us. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
And grief is isolating.
100%.
I can't tell you how many relationships I lost going through a divorce.
Yep. Yeah.
And it wasn't because, so the person I was married to described their divorce when I met them, losing friendships because somebody has to pick sides. And I don't even mean that. I mean the people that were on my side. I still lost them because how many times do you say, I'm so sorry that you're going through this?
Yep. Absolutely.
And people expect there to be an end to it.
Right. But it's not
It's
simple,
not
and B,
linear.
it's not linear. It's not, and there's not necessarily an end. There's a shift and there's change over time, but your relationship with it may change. But yeah, it's really oftentimes going through a loss, whether that's a relationship or the loss of a person or a loss of an identity, like, these rites of passage, there is something that is left behind. And in that, if you're, you really start to recognize the people around you who are like in it for the long haul and able to hang with that. But because, so many people are afraid of grief and just emotions, maybe in general, it's like, ooh, that's too big. I don't know how to handle that. And then poof.
Yep.
So it's rough.
It is.
Because then you experience other losses along the way.
You do, and it just compounds the grief.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What do you love most about yourself?
I really love how magical I am. I really am like such a fairy and like really just, I feel very connected to, spiritual happenings around me. And that can look so many different ways. But, there's times where I like come in from outside and my partner's like, what magic did you just do? Like they can like sense it on me when I'm like tapped in. And that's something that honestly has like served me throughout my life and kept me alive a lot of my life. And was, some of the only like support I feel like I was experiencing growing up. And so it's something that I feel very, connected to. And like it's such a beautiful, beautiful experience I had to be able to carry that with me and keep doing that, which, is kind of answering your question in a very abstract way, but it's also hard to put into words.
Yeah, no, I think we get it.
Yeah.
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 I think that your ability to connect to the world at large comes largely from your love for yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
What are you willing to fight for and why?
I really feel like doing death care or grief work or, holding this threshold is, there's not a ton of people who are there.
No.
I think that there for sure are people doing this work and it's so important and so needed. And I think that there's a lot who it's not comfy necessarily, like
no, it's hard work.
It is. It's quite a container to hold. And so I think really, truly like fighting for my capacity to continue to hold that space and not burning out, because I really think that like we're experiencing a collective loss right now and in collective grief and seeing so much intensity. And so I think being, someone who's holding that and being present with it, and then also just like continuing to expand awareness around it. And I think a lot of that hopefully will go into shifting the paradigm that we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no rushing it.
Totally. Oh no. Just like birth and just like death.
Yeah. They're very similar that way.
Yep.
What's one thing you would never change your mind about?
That's a hard one. I think there's a lot of things that I feel very committed to, like your previous question, but I think also like this never changing my mind, maybe I want to leave room to change my mind and feel like it's important to, like, as soon as you think you know something, you don't know it. And so I think coming into any experience with a relatively open mind and being willing to be curious is something that, I sometimes want my mind to change if there's something that isn't actually in alignment. And so, I think there's not a lot necessarily that I don't want to change my mind about, other than like some of the core values of just like, holding reverence for people's humanity and being like, holding, the sacredness of being alive and healing and all of those sort of things. But I also, like want to just be open in general.
And take in other perspectives.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's essential.
Yeah, recognize where rigidity is showing up.
Totally.
What was it like growing up in your family?
Really hard. Really hard. It was very isolating. There was a lot of kind of isolation in my family system. And there was a lot of alcohol and drug use. And it was a pretty painful time. And I feel so glad that I'm able to be here today and like have the resilience I've had to be able to get to this moment. But yeah, like my mom died when I was 8, and that was like such a pivotal moment, obviously.
I bet.
And then how that was held in my family system was not very much held. And, then that relationship with grief was so, just like pushed away, just very much pushed away. And so it was a lot of tumultuous experience and, survival. But, there also, as I mentioned before, like parts of the reason why I survived is I had a grief counselor when I was 8 years old who was incredible, and it was through my school, and it was a group counseling experience, and that was just like so massively impactful for me because it was the one space that I could go there. And then also being able to go outside in those moments where there was violence or it wasn't safe, and like there was this sycamore tree in my front yard that was just like held it down for me, like it was very much I felt held in the outdoors and felt really, and then there were like neighbors and teachers and people along the way who, took care of me, certain family members who would take care of me for, moments in time. And they certainly weren't perfect either, but who is? And also there was enough safety and security there for me to build that resilience and have those safe adults in my life.
What was it like to lose your mom at 8?
It was really painful and weird and very like, I think that at 8 developmentally, I for sure knew what was going on.
Yes.
And, there's only so much an 8-year-old can fully
grasp.
Yeah, and integrate. And so it really was I think is very lonely.
Yeah.
She was very much my person, even though, also an abuser in my life. But she was someone that I was very deeply connected to. I would say like my primary attachment figure.
Yeah.
And then, with my dad afterwards, there was so much of like not talking about it. They had separated within the year of my mom dying, and so there was a lot of anger and a lot of pain, and so it was a very off topic, like we would not be able to go there. So I felt really lonely and shut down, and just strange. It was like kind of continuing to go to school and doing the thing, but like having this like massive experience that I couldn't even fully have words for at that time.
Yeah. And no one around you understood.
Yep.
No wonder you're so strong.
Thanks.
Well, I guess you've already kind of answered that. What did you love doing as a child, and where do you still feel that part of yourself today?
Yeah, being outside and like with the bugs, honestly, like with the small creatures of the earth, like snails and, just like ladybugs, like just the little creatures, and being able to kind of zoom in on a layer that is maybe like not as acknowledged because it's so small, and you just, you walk on your merry way. But I do really love slowing down and being able to like look at the bark on a tree and notice like how much life and death is existing in that very, moment. And so I think being able to do that brings me a lot of joy and peace, and also like, yeah, enlivens that curiosity and even some of that safety that I was talking about.
No wonder you love photography.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun one.
If you could change one thing about your parents, what would it be?
Well, with my mom, I've thought before of like, what if she didn't die?
Yeah.
But I don't think that would have been good either. Like she was very, very sick. She was very sick. And as much as I like miss her and love her and can find all of the, like beautiful things in her and that relationship, I don't think that she was capable of, being the parent that I needed. And then, but what I think I would really change is my dad and I are no contact, and kind of disappeared in my life. And so sometimes I really wish that I could talk with my dad and just to have my dad have a little more capacity. And when I say a little more, I mean like probably a mile more, really, truly. But yeah, I really miss my dad. And that's a really big loss on top of my mom, to have a parent who's, actively choosing, even though my dad also is sick and, struggles with substance use. But it's really painful to have a parent who's not active in my life.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I mean, I didn't realize that going into this conversation, but I probably should have, just based upon the topic. But you and I have that in common.
Yeah.
Although I can't imagine what it would have been like to lose my mother at 8. I lost her in many ways at 8. It was a very significant. 7 and 8 is when most of my childhood trauma happened. So I can relate. Not
Yes.
same, but similar.
Of course.
And I won't say I don't know what's worse, but I will say that I think you can have perspective on what the difference is between not having somebody that you can't even have a relationship with, and then having somebody on this earth that you're supposed to have a relationship with, and watching other people have the family that you crave.
Yes.
Or deeply desire, and feeling alone in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
You really feel alone.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I think that, there should be clubs like, like
Let's make a club.
like the dads that are no longer dads, club, or the dead mom club, like that's,
Dead mom
or
club.
dead parent club,
Yeah.
that's a club. But
Yes.
yeah, it's a rough one. It's really a different type of grief to experience when it's a choice of some sort.
Yes.
And, you could argue, my mom had a choice and was very sick. But it's a different type of active, ongoing choice.
Yes.
And that's really, really rough.
Yes. I mean, I think people go through it when they go through a divorce too, because you're so close to that person, although I wasn't by the time I divorced them. But, I've gone through a significant relationship that, I've had to back up from as well. That's a conscious choice on their part. And when you love somebody and they're asking you to let go of a relationship, that's why the fact that you have your first partner in your life is so wonderful for you, that you gained some family, even if that relationship couldn't continue in the way that, or it expired in the way that it was meaningful for you in that time.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you're like tapping into something so important and significant that, like the grief of losing a partner and also, the people who have a partner that they've known and loved for a long time who like ghost them and just like totally disappear.
Yes.
Like that is so intense.
Yes.
And, I've had people in my grief groups who have had that type of experience. And it's like, oof, I just like, that's such a deep one. And so, yeah, to have such a closeness with someone and then have them just not be like being a ghost, but being on planet Earth is really painful.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Totally.
I was sitting here thinking, like, I don't even want to compare, like, the suddenness of, like, your mother's death in childhood. But having somebody who loves you but doesn't want to be in a relationship with you anymore is by far super devastating. Because the love that you have from there, I think that it was worded so well. I think this was maybe in the class. I can't remember where I heard it, but grief is just the reason, grief is love that has nowhere to go.
Yes. Yep. 100%. And it's like every loss is so unique, and it's hard to be like, oh, well, like this is, that's so much more painful. Or, I have people or clients who are like, oh, but it could have been worse, like this kind of, but every grief is fucking grief. Like it's just painful, and it's okay to be in that. It doesn't have to be like a dead mom or, like it can also be that loss of a relationship or a person or a part of self, there's so much there. But yeah, grief is grief.
And also has a lot to do with your attachment wounds.
Big time.
Yeah.
When absolutely.
You've had traumatic grief happen at an early age, it almost feels like any other grief just compounds that.
Yep.
And opens it up all over again.
Yes.
Anything that wasn't resolved gets put in the forefront.
Yes.
And just, compounds whatever loss you were already going through.
Totally. Right. And you get a lot of reenactments with that one. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of my 20s held. But
yes, I can imagine. Okay, let's see. You've spoken about grief as a lifelong companion. What personal losses or thresholds have most shaped who you are today?
Definitely the loss of my mom, as I've, tapped into. And yeah, I also, like strangely enough, my very first loss I had was one of my cats, Mikesh. And that was very impactful to me. I watched that happen, and it was very intense, and I wasn't included in that process, like when there was, taking Mikesh to the vet, because he was not fully alive. I wanted so badly to like be there and be with that because he was like so my cat. And I was denied that process. And then a lot of my mom's death, I was denied a lot of that process too.
Yes, you were.
There's a lot that I was included in, which I feel grateful for, but it wasn't, I think it was just the hospice people that were really encouraging that, thank goodness. But yeah, I think this kind of story of like not being included really emerged in that. And so for me, like that's just one of my wounds that I have to be with, and, not just having FOMO all the time with like anything in my life.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. But I think like those kind of pieces, but also just really informing me on my spirituality and location in life and how to interact in life and connect with myself and connect with the beloved dead and being connected to the other side of the veil and being able to kind of have a pulse on that a little bit, like for lack of a better metaphor, but, just being able to tap into that and have connection has really supported me in being able to hold other people in those thresholds and being able to support that passage as well as those moments in my own life. Yeah,
you are the wounded healer.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it interesting how we go into the work of the things that are our lived experience?
Yes. It's the gift in the wound.
It is.
It is, absolutely, and teaches us a lot. And I think it's hard sometimes not to get lost in that rescuer or like, getting lost in the like, oh, I have to fix it, like what you prompted. But it's definitely something that is, that's what creates the known experience so that you can help others in that too and support.
Truly see them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. What are you still working on healing?
So much. Always.
Love your honesty.
Yeah. I think my attachment system is definitely a big one. And that has come a really long way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still have...
Go grad school.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, my God. That was an experience.
Wait, did you go to Oregon State? Where did you go for grad school?
No, I went to California Institute of Integral Studies.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
My God, I've been looking into their psilocybin facilitation.
Yes, I want to do that one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a wonderful program.
Yes, it was really incredible. Like, of course, like any program had its flaws, like was not perfect, but there's so much about that education that I feel so grateful for and just was really solid.
Incredible faculty.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Also bummed. I lived in San Francisco right around the corner, but it wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah,
at the time.
totally.
I was in a completely different life, in a completely different mindset at the time.
So real.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Sorry. You were talking
that's
about
okay. I forgot your original question. Yes. Okay, yeah. Grad school, definitely. That was like such a transformative experience. Like it's my partner calls it therapy boot camp. Like it's just like
I don't even know how to describe it. I think I said maybe I said it over the summer. Like if you would have told me what I was really getting into when I applied, I probably would have been like, never mind.
Totally.
That seems like a lot of work.
Yes.
I mean, the physicality of the work, yes, but also the deep inner work. And I was like, oh, I've been through therapy. And I'm really glad I have because I was able to access it like, we were talking about this morning in treatment planning, that anytime you learn a modality, you're going to a deeper level of how you can sit with people.
Totally.
And so that's, I'm in 100% agreement with you. The assignments that you have to do are an excavation that I wouldn't wish on most people.
Totally. Totally.
Because, you're supposed to somehow, I don't know, get to know yourself so well. I think that's the goal. Get to know yourself so well that you see yourself when you're sitting in a room with someone else. But
yeah, it's hard work. It's really, you really have to go to the depths and just like look at all the stuff that you would rather not. And just like, and then like, integrating that into being a clinician and being able to ensure that you're not reenacting your stuff in the room and being able to recognize like, oh, that touches on these wounds, like I need to watch that. And
coming from a trauma background like you and I, like there's some stuff.
There is.
There's some countertransference
totally.
there. Probably more than most counselors.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like similar, like that wounded healer. It's like that's the gift and, the pain. It's like then you get to see.
If you've processed and
integrated. If you've processed it, yes. Good discernment there. Because then you can witness people in their stuff and really have the resonance and the understanding. And I really am a firm believer in like being human in the therapy room and, for the right clients or the right moment, like, having those moments of self-disclosure of saying like, I get it and I'm with you is like, that can go such a long way for some clients. Like not everyone, but I think it's something. Anyways, this is a little side tangent, but
you can go on a tangent.
Just like I think that there's so much that is very rigid, and I mean, you look at the history of therapy and how it's created, and it's like just so weird and not ideal and not human. It's and very power over, and so I really. And Gestalt therapy. I don't know if you've covered that at all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's like it's two-person therapy. It's not one-person therapy.
Yeah.
You're both in the room. You're both there with it. So
and the energy between us.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going somewhere, but you started talking about Gestalt and I totally forgot. I think we were talking about healing, but that's okay. What part of yourself are you actively tending or growing right now?
I would say I'm really tending my like building of routine and being able to, like growing up in a chaotic household, it's really hard for me to have routines and to like really have those stick. And so my ideal is moving towards a morning practice or some sort of daily practice. It doesn't even have to be the morning, but just like integrating more of a daily solid touchstone to be able to revisit in and out of every day and have that hold me, because I think it would help me out a lot to be able to do that. But, it's tricky sometimes to find, like it's easy to find ways to not do those things or to not, sit down and do that journaling or that creative activity. But I think it's really essential to find a way to build that into my life because, it's going to just carry me and help me in my healing process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when you come from a high trauma profile, your self-care is like, I don't even think you know what self-care is.
Totally. It took me a really long time to be able to start to identify that and to prioritize it. Like, I could identify it maybe, but then prioritizing it is a whole other story. But it's so nice and refreshing to see how much has already changed in my life and just like, really sometimes I have to remind myself of that, and that like I've really come a long way and I'm in so much more stability than I've ever been, and just being really grateful for that. I got my like chaotic good, like I'm still a chaotic person in some ways, but yeah, it's just so important in that trauma healing.
And for anyone listening or watching, to remind them that a lot of times we can't come to our healing without having that stability or security.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where healing begins.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And it's where the deeper work can occur. And because jumping into the deep, like you can't do that kind of work if
your nervous system is all over the place and you're in chaos, you live in chaos.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people, when they do finally, a lot of people who've experienced trauma, when they finally do experience stability, that's when everything crumbles in one way or another, like that internal like breaking moment or like a dark night of the soul, really having so much come up, and then people will be like, why like I'm the most stable, everything's safe and I'm happy, but that is where that work happens. And it's significant because your system hasn't known that before. So yeah.
Get wisdom. Where am I? I think I'm almost at the bottom here. Okay, I think you kind of touched on this, but what old ideas about yourself are you outgrowing, and what is that making space for?
The old idea of being small is like a big one, small and quiet. Being here on this podcast is definitely a stretch for that, and like such a significant part of my healing, and also just like developing as a professional too, and like really believing in my businesses and like myself and my creative projects, because it's really scary to put my voice out there and to like, I mean, this is wild that this is happening. And I think it's just so important, because I probably will always like say things that later I'm like, oh, why did I say that? But okay, that's fine. Like, we're human, and to come at that with compassion. But I lived so much of my life just making myself small, fitting the mold, like, and that goes into a lot of what I was talking about earlier, like, being in a straight relationship or
people pleasing,
fawning.
To save state, to stay safe.
Yeah, big time. And now it's like I'm at a point where I have the stability and have done enough work to feel safe enough to push myself further and be able to stretch those limits and my comfort zone, and also just like really believing in what I'm doing too, in my heart, and trusting that. So, yeah.
How do you lead yourself when things feel uncertain, overwhelming, or painful?
I really just grounding is like the first thing that comes to mind. So that can look so many different ways, but I think identifying within myself what's happening, and, like utilizing like parts work and being like, okay, like little me is freaking out right now, and being able to just like call that in and call upon like my wiser self or my adult self and higher self. And there's a teacher that has taught me so much, Rachel Bloom, and she does flower essences, and she does, like spiritual kind of circles, and just like leads through somatic exercises and one-on-ones. And she's incredible. Highly recommend her. But her kind of orientation is like the higher heart and being within the heart and like kind of coming into that wiser, higher heart. And so I think coming into the heart space is always beneficial to like remember, and really like remembrance is a really big thing for me too. Like just remembering and coming back to myself and that heart space and getting out of my head, like coming down a little bit and being able to be in relationship with myself in a way that's not, like self-abusive. So.
I think I already know this, but who are the people who uplift you and help you stay grounded?
My partner, Andy, is a big one. They are like who I feel we've known each other a very, very long time and have a really wild history and story, but they are who I feel like so safe around and like be my full self and are always rooting me on. They're also a therapist, so that's really nice to be able to like be in the same kind of like understanding and connect in that way, but
and be truly held.
Yes, especially as I was like starting my private practice and like, being like, what? Like they were able to offer me so much guidance in that and support. I also give them a lot of support too. It's not one-ended, but they call me their secretary because I'm like always proofreading all of their things that they post for their business. But yeah, they really are just like so consistently there for me and just like believe in me. And that's been like one of the biggest healing pieces to my trauma too. And just like really being able to lean into that relationship. And I feel very, very, very lucky to love them and have them love me.
And probably heal a lot of the things that your dad was never capable of healing.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think we do that for each other. We have similar backgrounds and we both grew up in the same hometown. So it's like we have this like deep understanding of each other's root systems and like where we come from, and able to see that in one another and like have compassion and care and constantly working on codependent, patterns, but like we're both committed, really both committed to that healing and changing and growing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will say it's wonderful to have a partner who cheers you on.
Yes.
And loves you for you.
Yes.
I think you articulated it beautifully, and I don't need to restate it, but just that's what I was hearing in that, is that it really can change your life. When someone steps in and shows you that they believe in you, that no matter what you do is amazing, and
absolutely
really holds you.
Yes. And just really kind of like, for me also like uplifting that sense of self-worth and being like, I deserve this kind of love. And I think that's so important.
And healing.
Yes, big time.
So healing.
Yes. Yeah. And so just really being able to lean into that is really powerful.
Because you probably had some sort of story around not feeling worthy or not being wanted.
Big time.
Or,
Big time.
I mean, I know nothing about it.
Totally.
Yeah. You described grief as something that lives alongside us. How do you understand grief as something that lives not just emotionally or spiritually, but physically in the body over time?
Yeah, I think that the way that I've always created metaphor and embodied grief is through water and waves. And so I think for me, I feel that in my body is like, the waters may be calm, but there's still grief waters there, like it's still living in me and it's still informing me and also, like giving me life in its own unique kind of way.
That metaphor.
And then there's times where the waves are really big and it feels like you're like being totally pummeled by a wave that you can't catch your breath, and you like, I mean,
Tossed
just, yeah,
around.
don't know what way is up. Like, just so, don't know if you're going to be able to breathe again, like that deep feeling in the chest. Like, and you do always come through. Like, and that is wild because sometimes those grief cries are like, you're like, whoo, am I going to make it out of here alive? But, you know, it's so, yeah, that water just like being ever present in my body and my system is, something I've had to learn how to trust.
I love that metaphor.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
never saw it that way, and it's so good.
Thanks. I can't take credit for it. It's probably like my therapist.
It doesn't matter. You can take credit for it now.
Totally.
You taught it to me.
Totally.
And to anyone who's listening. What do you notice grief doing to people's nervous systems as far as memory, sleep, appetite, or sense of safety, even long after the initial loss?
Yeah. I think that it can be such an energetic drain on the system, on the nervous system, on the body, and can be so just present in a way that, you know, maybe some people are like, it's been a year. Like, why am I so exhausted still? Or like, oh, it's been 3 years. Like, why do I still feel this way?
Why am I still crying about this?
But it takes, I mean, it's never ending. Like, sorry, like spoiler alert, but it's never ending. It just changes over time. And I do really believe in the nervous system's like ability to come back and online in a more robust, vibrant kind of way. But it takes so much time, and it takes so much tending and slowing down. And like our ancestors and some cultures slow down in a huge kind of way when there's a death and when they're experiencing grief, and honor that process. And I think when we're living in capitalism, it's like we don't have the space and time and privilege to slow down because life doesn't slow down. And so it's like pushing through because you have to, and like you're like, you know, time off is like cut off from being able to grieve. It's like ridiculous because it takes the body so long. And I'm not going to be able to remember the author, but I think the book is called The Grieving Brain. And this author talks about how the brain is always expecting that person. Like if we're talking about like a physical loss of someone dying, like, and maybe like a partner you lived with, for instance, or a parent, your brain still expects that physicality.
Yes.
And that process of not being able to like integrate that in your brain, like that takes so much energy and is so hard, like, and at times impossible to integrate.
It's silent.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah.
How do you help people normalize those experiences without I can't say the word.
Pathologizing.
Thank you,
Totally.
Pathologizing.
It's because we shouldn't pathologize. That's why it's a little stumble. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't orient to diagnoses. I think there's a time and a place and blah, blah, blah. And I think we're human, having human experiences under, you know, really challenging circumstances. So really, I just try to meet my clients or the people who work with me with the normal, just like really just like having the resonance and saying like, of course you're still tired. Like, and really reflecting, you know, the enormity of what they're moving through and how I'm seeing them through that, because it's easy to be like, well, it's already been 3 years. Like, why am I still here? Or whatever it is. But from the outside, like, yeah, like losing your dad dying, who is like your person in life and like one of your best friends, like that's a lifetime of
memories,
like, absolutely,
experiences.
Yes.
Attachment.
Yes.
Feelings.
Yes.
Love. so many things.
Yes. So I think just like really like bringing in the whole picture, like zooming out a bit is really like something that can be supportive to clients, and just like being like, yeah, look at all of the like circumstances around this. And also just like bringing in the neurobiology of it too, and just being
Yes.
like, yeah, like your brain is shifting, like the neural pathways are like, it's short circuiting, like you're trying to find new neural pathways from something that's been like so there for so long, or like your nervous system, this is an attachment wounding, like this is something that's happening that, you know, you on your like thinking brain might be like, I'm doing okay, but your system is not, and that's okay. So, yeah.
I had an instructor, and I'm probably going to mess this up a little bit, but I'll never forget. She was talking about grief as an analogy with like a jar full of balls. And as your healing begins, those balls inside the jar, for lack of better like visual metaphor, are bumping up against the side of the wall. And as your capacity for healing expands, the jar gets larger. And
Yes.
so what's inside the jar isn't always hitting the walls.
Yes. Right. But nothing has gone away.
Nope.
Like,
You're
yeah.
still holding it.
Yes.
You're still holding it. But like you said, your relationship to it shifts and alters. And maybe you're able to have more compassion for what you're holding.
Yes, totally. Which can be hard in our world. Like it can be really hard to have that. But I think connecting in with other people who've experienced loss, or like tuned into that, or, you know, like grief resources is really important to be able to like connect in with those sort of analogies and be like, oh, okay, like I'm not, you know,
There's
crazy
nothing
for,
wrong.
like for experiencing this. Like this is a normal experience under like really painful circumstances.
And when you were hitting on how some cultures allow for grief and ours does not, ours specifically here in the US, and in other parts of the world, but specifically here in the US, I was thinking about humanity or the collective at large right now, and the people who are waking up to the tremendous amount of grief that they have for feeling disillusioned, for so many people being involved in the hurt, in the crimes, in the taking advantage of of women in general, young women, and the grief that people are experiencing now. I feel so much for them because there is no time to process that.
Totally.
There absolutely is no time to process that. We're in a place where we have to just move forward.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, I really think of grief as like a rite of passage. And yeah, crossing that threshold isn't always like pretty and like, oh, we have like, you know, like we're able to ritualize it and we're able to like hold it. It's like, no, sometimes it's like, it takes so long to integrate, but when you're in the action mode and in the like awakening and like, oh, things need to change right this moment and I need to be out there doing this, it's so much for the system.
To grieve and also to be walking forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wish it on anyone.
No, me neither.
That's rough.
It is.
Many people don't realize that the brain often interprets loss as a threat to survival. In your work, how do you see fight, flight, or freeze responses show up in grief, sometimes months or even years later?
Yeah, I would say obviously it depends on the person and their own relationship and their, you know, attachment history. But honestly, I do see a lot of freeze. Like I see a lot of like dissociation and, you know, like just feeling stuck, being, and, maybe that's too general of a statement, but it can be so immobilizing. And so that's why, what you're just saying about like having to take a step forward, even though you're in grief, it's like, that's such a huge contrast, because grief kind of just brings you to your knees.
It does.
It immobilizes you. And I think there's a need for that. But when we're operating in a system that's go, 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 or there is that call, it's like, sometimes the system just shuts down, and it might be functional freeze, but it's like, it's still freeze response. But I think also, of course, and you might see this in like family systems around the time of someone dying, you see a lot of flare-ups. Like there'll be sometimes, and, what we may call dysfunctional family systems is like, that like the fight response or the flee response of people like not being able to hang and just like gone, like just nope, not there. Or the people who are then like creating conflict in the family system and fighting. And you can see that in like the legal stuff that happens after someone dies. And like, it's wild. Like kind of the worst of the worst can come out because it's so deeply painful. And I don't think it's easy to metabolize that or be with that emotional experience because we're not taught. And then it comes out so sideways in all of those responses. So yeah, I think it has really a wide spectrum of expression.
I think also any large rite of passage gives people permission to say whatever they've been pushing down, for instance, or gives the opportunity to break open and release what it is that they've held for so long. So, birth, marriage, death, funeral, right?
Yeah.
That like all of the things that my mom wanted to say about my ex-husband really came out when I filed, right?
Totally.
Like all the things she was holding back.
Totally.
She's like, well, now I'm just going to tell you. I was like, I don't need that on top of everything else.
Totally.
Yeah. Now I'm holding your pain and mine.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is kind of this moment of like, well, the breaking is here, so let's just lay it all out. But yeah, it can be it's such a tender time.
It is.
It's such a tender time.
It is. Oh, how do you help people understand their reactions as protective rather than signs that they're doing grief wrong?
Yeah, I think, I even relate to this a little bit as a griever myself. I actually have a really dear friend who I, like 6 months ago or something, I was like in a moment of grief and just like having this like ongoing loss with my grandma who's, in her dying process in a lot of ways. And I was like, I can't access the grief. Like I was just talking to them being like, I can't access the grief. Like I just feel so dissociated. And they were like, dissociation is a part of grief. And I was like, oh yeah. It's like I'm over here like, being the person but it was just like such a helpful moment to like remember that grief is so many more emotional experiences than just like the typical like
Crying.
5 stages of grief. Yeah. And it can be so deeply layered and like multiple at once. And so I think it's really important to be able to bring that in and just say like, whatever, like it doesn't matter what the experience is. Everyone grieves in their own kind of way. And just being able to bring in that like, it's just normalizing that, and it's okay that it looks this way right now, and it will probably change.
There's research showing that grief can involve prolonged surges of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. I'm curious how you think about emotional intensity becoming familiar or even mistaken for aliveness after loss.
Yeah, that's a great inquiry. And I think that, you know, again, everyone responds to loss in their own ways, but some people do kind of get that like wind of like, okay, and just going along. And it takes them like a year to be like really slowed down, and maybe some of that process starting to slow down. And they're like, oh, wait, I haven't processed this. Like, and kind of it hits them in a delayed kind of way. But yeah, and then this like familiarity piece. I mean, I think also for people who've experienced trauma, that might be a place of a lot of familiarity and kind of, and in that, you know, you could see people, you know, being in that reenactment space and, you know, it's like seeking out the experiences that are kind of bringing on that cortisol because it does become familiar and it's a distraction from, you know, really sitting down and being in it. So,
and I think a lot of it, you touched on this earlier, is how was grief modeled to you? And if your family never really dealt with grief and doesn't deal with grief well, and you're taught to push forward, or you're in a position, for instance, I'm thinking the first person I thought of when you were talking was my sister-in-law lost her husband, and it was the second husband she lost. And I'll never forget her oldest daughter. Like, we were all like, that girl, like one day she's going to have to deal with the fact that her father died. But in the meantime, she was so busy taking care of her mother that there was just no time for her grief.
Yes. Totally.
Or I'm thinking of like avoidant attachment style, who just like walks away from a relationship and then starts another one. And it's like eventually that grief will show up.
Yes, absolutely. And likely show up really sideways, you know? But yeah, I think it is all the potential of just being delayed, but it does show up in one way or another. And
you can't run away from it.
No. I wish, you know, like,
I think we all do. I think that's the point of the disassociation.
Totally.
Okay. We often talk metaphorically about heartbreak, but grief can actually affect the heart physically. How does holding that reality shape the gentleness you bring to grief tending?
Yeah, I think really bringing in the somatic, you know, awareness and the embodiment, and also being able to like bring that into, you know, like a loss of a relationship or other types of losses, but absolutely being able to bring awareness into that, because there's like people that are like, it's like either the heart or the lungs oftentimes. And, you know, it can be so severe that people take themselves to the emergency room.
Yep.
And or actually have heart attacks. Like the rate is like exponentially higher like the week after a loved one dies, like in a long-term partnership, I think it is. But yeah, I think being able to tune into how the physical body is being impacted is an important awareness to bring in, and also like a level of psychoed that's really important, because it almost like, I think probably for some people like validates it a little bit more, and like, you know, like brings
when
it in.
You find out that there's broken heart syndrome and it's real.
Yes.
That your heart is actually breaking.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, actually. Yeah. Feels like someone stabbed me.
Totally.
Like 300 times.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think it's really nice to, I mean, not nice, but helpful
I love that we're
to
laughing
bring
about
that in.
this too, by the
You
way.
got to. Grief and death humor, I think, are like, you know,
So
up
necessary.
Here and, you know.
Inappropriate, but necessary.
Yes, totally. You know, there's ways to do so in a really poignant kind of way, but it takes years to hone that one in. But yeah, anyways, I think that being able to just like tune into that and validate it is really helps people feel seen, and also like tune in with their bodies in a deeper way.
Yeah, I think that being seen part is so valuable with grief.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
because I think, you know, you could say probably everyone is dealing with some sort of grief.
Totally.
I think of
would
like
say
the
so.
unhoused community and how invisible they feel. Like
Yes.
being seen is grief, right? It
Yes.
is the opposite of grief, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It can definitely be a really significant and or like necessary container for grief, that witnessing.
Yes. Many of us were taught to suppress tears, yet emotional tears help regulate the nervous system and release stress hormones. How do you work with people who learned early that crying wasn't safe or allowed?
I actually have a client right now that we're discussing this.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that for one, just like, again, normalizing, but also, you know, I think bringing in the permission of you don't have to cry in front of other people. Like, really, what my intention here is like rebuilding that relationship within yourself so that you can access crying on your own. But like for some people they might be like, I can't cry in front of even my friends. Like, what is that about? And it's like, yeah, if that was not modeled to you and not normalized or you were punished for that, like, yeah,
Or
of
shunned.
of
Or
course.
bullied.
Yes, absolutely.
Crybaby.
Totally. And so being able to like just take away that layer of like, you don't have to cry in front of people. Like, that's not the goal here. It's great if you can be able to receive that and, feel that, type of safety in your system. But being able to just like access the tears on your own and feel, like you can do that on your own is the most important piece, because you're right, it is regulating, and I think our tears do want to be held too. And like, that's the first step, is being able to recreate that relationship and permission within yourself.
That was good.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Grief can be physically exhausting and even weaken the immune system, yet our culture expects people to keep functioning. How do you help people honor the biological reality of grief without shame?
Yeah. Kind of like planning out, like, outside of, I honestly actually like kind of utilize like a neurodivergent lens for this and talk about it in terms of spoons, and talk about like, okay, you have to have this many spoons to show up to daily life and like work and do the things. Like, where else in your life are you filling the tank or emptying it? And like, how can we map that out together? And this is someone that maybe is a little bit more like intellectual,
Yeah, I was like, what about the spoons? Wait, help me out with the spoons.
Totally. The spoons are like, yeah, this piece of like, for people who are disabled, neurodivergent, or like have experienced trauma, you might be given a certain amount of spoons, which is kind of like this energy that you have for the day.
Or like tools.
Yes,
Okay.
totally. And so it's like, okay, if I only have 10 spoons in a day when the average person has 20, like, where are my spoons going? And like, maybe all 10 of your spoons need to go to showing up to work. And at the end of the day, you don't have any more spoons for like going to that dinner with your friend. And so really reallocating those spoons and being able to find ways to like kind of build in more spoons if possible, because it might shift day to day or season to season. But yeah, really kind of like mapping out what is needed to preserve that energy, so that there isn't like isolation happening and, you're not getting your needs met, because yeah, it's frustrating how our system operates.
Yeah. Many grieving people live in a state of hyperarousal with a difficulty of sleeping, racing thoughts, and bodies that won't rest. How do you think about rest and safety when the nervous system has learned to stay alert?
Well, I think that there's, I don't know. Let me think on that for a second. What was the question? again. My spoons are starting to dwindle.
Yes!
I'm so here for this.
Okay. Many grieving people live in a state of hyperarousal, the difficulty sleeping, all of that. How do you think about rest and safety when the nervous system has learned to stay alert?
Yeah. I think there's so much need to be able to acknowledge that within oneself and be able to just recognize that there's something happening that isn't aligned with what's happening in the real moment. And so in that, at least for me, there's a lot of like bringing in mindfulness and like presence awareness and being able to, orient to the here and now in a way that says, okay, I am safe. And how can I bring that down? But being in grief, there's not, or in any kind of like intensely painful emotion or hyperarousal, if you're really outside your window of tolerance, you might not have that capacity to reach that, bringing your prefrontal cortex online and being able to like operate in that kind of way to make sense of it. But I think some of the basics is just like really feeling like that connection to earth, like the contact, being able to slow down and come into the body, and utilizing tools of even just like taking a shower and just like utilizing the senses to be able to kind of come back in. But also it's like sometimes you can only do that to a certain extent. And sometimes it's just like at play and you kind of have to write it out and be with that process until sometimes the system just exhausts itself. And then you do fall into that state of being able to come down
and rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. What role do ritual, creativity, and embodiment play in grief tending and healing?
Well, I think it plays a big one. I think that ritual is, really helps us ground into the rite of passage and acknowledge when there's been a major shift. And so for me, that's looked a lot of different ways. But sometimes that's just like, creating like one example is like creating an altar to the ancestors or the beloved dead. And that's a way that there can kind of be an ongoing ritual or a place to visit and be in ritual. And some people, I think of ritual as like this big thing.
Yeah.
But really it can just be, it's really about intention and kind of having a container around that. So it can be lighting a candle for 2 minutes and, stating, your like what's coming through or like the pain in your heart or, being with the grief in a certain way and then blowing out that candle. And that's a ritual, So I think it's really just having these containers along the way to be able to support feeling contained when maybe you don't generally in that grief. And then creativity is can be its own ritual. But really, I think that it can embody a transformative process and kind of mirror, that creation and destruction process that you're moving through in your system anyways. And being able to move it through the body and have it be something that moves through you and can be witnessed by you. And then, being able to, it doesn't have to be a piece of art. Like it's
just expression.
It's just expression.
Especially if you can't cry or you're not a writer.
Yes. And there's so much in that too of like different mediums you can use to kind of access. So like watercolors might be helpful for that one. And being able to kind of like tap into the feelings a bit more. But honestly, I think that it's like so essential, and what is like primarily missing in our culture is the ritual. We have a funeral after someone dies, and then
and
that's
then you're supposed to move on.
Totally. Right.
Just get over it.
Yeah. So creating your own rituals of like maybe that's yearly on a death anniversary or like creating rituals that just make sense to you. But it's also different when it's a loss that isn't as tangible, like a loss of identity, like, going through divorce or, like coming out as queer
Yep.
or, or someone ghosting you. And so I think you kind of have to get a little more creative in rituals with that and be able to find ways to kind of integrate that in. But that to me is like the fun part of the process, and like the role that I love to hold with other people is being able to co-create and collaborate on like, how can we ritualize this, and where are the places that will help this kind of root in and not fix it or change it, but at least be just a touchstone along the way that is a support.
I'm just noticing the time. How does your background in midwifery shape the way you hold emotional and spiritual thresholds?
Just like so much. Like it is such a huge part of the way that I hold space. And I think I got to be witness and like present and, involved with so many births in which that witnessing that threshold is so tangible and so wild. Like it's just, it really, I think, helped me integrate in my system and my kind of way that I orient in the world, like just really how significant that process is and how it's happening all the time, just in different ways.
Yeah.
But when you witness someone, going through labor and having that type of experience, and then coming to that moment where, like a body emerges in the world through their body. And sometimes, like it might take a minute or so for, the baby to land in its body. And watching that process of like a body becoming embodied is like the wildest thing. And that, you just can't make that up. Like it's just so profound and so magical. And so I think I really hold that space of like these threshold moments hold that same kind of energy. It just looks different and is a little more unseen. But it's so informative to my whole training in midwifery was holistic care. And so I learned that through my educational experience and was able to practice that for a long time. So then coming into like integral and holistic therapy, it just was like a really natural shift for me to be able to apply it. But really, I think it just comes to like holding the sacredness of, transitions in life and, just holding that with that like deep reverence.
What do you notice most people need but rarely receive when they're in grief?
Time and presence. I think time is a big one.
I agree.
Yeah. It's really just so hard to, witness people not having that time and
feeling rushed.
Yes, 100%. And then thinking something's wrong with them because they're not over it in the like prescribed time limit.
And everyone wants them to be over it.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's grief in that.
Totally.
Like, why are we still talking about this? Your dad's dead.
Totally. Right. Like, that's just what it is now.
You just need to accept that reality and then...
No.
Isn't there a Saturday Night Live skit about that? Or there's something. We had to watch it in class. I can't remember what it is. It's like, just get over it.
Yeah. It's pretty wild, the expectation around that. And it takes other people experiencing loss to be like, oh, and that's the hard part is when you experience grief when other people around you haven't. It can be very isolating and you're like, is this normal? And everyone kind of has this expectation. But yeah, and that's what I mean by presence too, is like other people around you to be able to hold that space with you and hear you and witness you and just be with you in it.
Yeah. How do you help people stay present with grief without rushing towards resolution?
I do a lot of normalization of that there won't be resolution. I'm very like blunt about that.
I like that.
Yeah, I think whenever I see like an inquiry or someone uses that kind of language, I really try to kind of like focus on that and restructure expectation, because if someone thinks that they're going to get over their grief or, heal their grief, you can heal with your grief. I really believe in that, but you're not going to get to a point where like it's resolved. It's just not. It might be quieter and like, not, those waters might be calmer more often and maybe even for years, but it's not to say those waters aren't there anymore. And so I am actually quite blunt about that with people, of just like, let's talk about that and really shift the expectation in it. And like, yeah, of course you want to get over it. Like, of course you want resolution. Like, yeah, I wish it was that way, but it's just not.
It's a part of you.
It is, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
If you died but could return to Earth for 5 minutes to experience one last thing, what would it be?
It's funny. The thing that comes to mind is like swimming in water, like natural bodies of water. But what's funny to me about it is that I really struggle to jump into water. Like
Me
it's really a hard thing for my system, and yet when I do it, it feels so good. But yeah, I think, and like, of course, like hugging my beloved, but maybe swimming with them too. Like just being able to jump into a body of water like the ocean or a lake and being in that.
When you're 90 years old, what do you hope you've stood for, offered, or given to the world?
Well, I definitely hope that I've made impacts in people's lives, and not just in a way of like, making a positive impact that helped, which like, yes, of course, but something that can kind of be carried forward. Like, I hope that I am able to leave something behind that continues to help other people and support people. And I don't fully know what that looks like, but yeah. I think just kind of like eventually being an ancestor that is someone that can support those who are grieving or navigating threshold moments.
In a world shaped by loss, impermanence, and profound transition, how do you think we can incorporate more love for ourselves and for the world around us without turning away from what's hard?
That's a big one. The first thing that comes to mind is compassion, and really self-compassion first and foremost, and then moving that towards compassion to others. Because, it's, so easy to, in that state of being in pain, to close off and be in that survival mode and be cold or like walled off. And in that, there's not space for that like heart expression or heart connection. And so I think being able to, like access compassion even in those most painful moments just builds in the awareness and capacity and space to be able to withstand that kind of pain, and also like model that for others and like let that be spread outwards. Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. I appreciate everything that I learned from you, and you have so much wisdom to share when it comes to this, and it's been wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.